Hello, my friends. Dennis Gebhardt here with Guru Village. Welcome to this episode of Brain Smoke. You know, it's been many years since I've been in this industry, and you would think that after this many years that we would be able to master gray coverage. And yet today, still in 2018, salon professionals throughout our industry struggle with gray coverage every day. So what I wanted to do today is take a few minutes and explain to you maybe a couple of things that might help you the next time you encounter a head of gray hair. And I think it begins by understanding, first of all, why hair grays. I've always been told by my mentor that when you understand the why, the how becomes so much easier. So let's talk about the why. Why does hair gray? And there's really two reasons internally that happens. First of all, the body stops producing an amino acid called tyrosine. And tyrosine is responsible for the coloration of pigment. It creates the color of melanin in the hair. And so a period of time in our life as we evolve, our body stops producing that amino acid. But the strange thing happens is they still keep producing cells. So as cells are delivered to the base of the hair follicle, the body simply takes those cells and converts them into extra cuticle. And you may have seen hair strands that, as they grew out, gray hair strands that almost look like, if you would imagine, a tree with tree branches. In fact, they were so resistant they wouldn't even lay down when you put a solution on them. They look like they had small little side branches coming off the side of them. That's excessive cuticle. And that's one of the challenges that we encounter. The second reason that hair will gray is that as we evolve, as we get older, about the age of 20, our body starts to slow down its production of an enzyme called catalase. Now, catalase is the enzyme that is responsible for controlling the peroxide that we produce in our body. That's right. We produce peroxide in our body. It is a side effect of the normal biological function of the human body. If we have too much peroxide, too much acid in our body, remember our blood is alkaline. If we produce too much acid in our body, then it puts us in jeopardy of losing our life. I mean, I'm sure you've all heard the joke, two hairdressers, two hair colorists walk into a bar. The first hair colorist says, "Give me a glass of H2O." The second hair colorist says, "I'll have a glass of H2O too." And the second hairdresser died. Dun, dun, dun. That's a little hair colorist joke. In any case, catalase slows down its production. It's part of the oxidative stress process as we age. And as it slows down its production of catalase, then what happens is our body starts to produce an increased level of peroxide. So you can understand that internally, basically, the hair is starting to lose its natural pigmentation to begin with. So that's what's happening inside the body. Now, as the hair extends out of the scalp, and now we start to address it because the client doesn't want to have gray hair. She wants to camouflage her gray or hide her gray. We now have to think about how we deal with it. So here's what we have to understand once we have that kind of hair in front of us to deal with. First of all major manufactured hair color today is really designed to penetrate from 7 to 10 layers of cuticle. That's the average amount of layers of cuticle that are on an average head. And that's why I always say the cuticle is not a layer, it is cuticle layers. So 7 to 10 layers. Now you can imagine if I have resistant gray that has produced a lot of excessive cuticle, I'm going to have many more than 10 layers. Sometimes gray fibers have anywhere from 14 to 18 layers of cuticle, which means that it doesn't matter what product you're using, even if it's made special gray series with an extra dose of color in it, you may not get adequate coverage in a simple standard application. So here are some steps that I would recommend that you take if you're going to be addressing gray hair and you want to ensure the most successful results consistently. First, step number 1, always clarify the hair. Always clarify the hair. That's right. I want you to clean that hair before you paint it. And that is not a common behavior in our salons today. Most salon professionals today end up putting color right over the top of whatever the client brought into the salon. With gray hair, you have to be kind of conscientious about it. First of all, it's going to be a different texture that you're working with. Now, that doesn't mean that all gray hair is resistant. It simply means that sometimes you will run across a resistant type of gray hair. Some of you color gray hair that's very soft. It receives color. You're probably getting great coverage with a demi-permanent hair color. Good for you. But those resistant heads, we need to make sure that we prepare the hair properly. So by clarifying it, you pull off any buildup that's on that hair strand. Usually gray hair occurs on people as they get older. So not only are they losing color in their hair, they're losing color in their skin. And so in order for us to keep that youthful appearance, we're using those melon extracts and emollients on our skin to keep it soft and supple. It's possible that we'll push some of those extracts or emollients into our hairline, and that could impede the color from taking successfully. So cleaning the hair first. Step number 2, always take very, very fine sections when you're doing gray coverage. Usually 1/8 of an inch, no more than 1/8 of an inch. You should be able to read newsprint underneath that hair. That's how thin that section should be. Remember that hair color has to push through that section. You have to make sure that you get adequate saturation, because if you don't get adequate saturation, the color's not going to take well. So fine sections, very, very important. Step number 3, when you are starting your application, it is best to start your application in the area of the head where there is most gray. So normally we would start around the front of the hairline or the temple areas with our application, because that's usually where most people see the gray initially. And it allows the product to stay on the hair a little bit longer than the normal process. Step number 4, extend your processing time. There's nothing that says you have to process for 30 minutes. Here's what we know. If there is excessive cuticle on that hair, it's going to take a longer amount of time for the developer to deliver those intermediary dyes all the way into the cortical fibers where we want that color to bind and hold. So if you extend your processing time an extra 15 minutes, what you're doing is you're allowing that extra amount of oxidation to occur. You're allowing the developer to expel or release more oxygen and get better dye development. Step number 4, when you go to remove the color, when the processing time is over, test strand first. Wipe down your section that had the most gray. If the color slipped, you can make an adjustment immediately. And here's how you do that. You take the same formula you've been using, mix it up with a 1.5% developer, lay it right over the top of what's on that head. That's right. Don't remove the color off the head. Lay the other color right over the top of it. What you're doing is you're adding pigment to your formula. You can let it process another 10 or 15 minutes, and you will see it start to deposit down. And that way it will avoid those areas that might have slipped traditionally. So this will give you a better advantage of creating a successful result. So remember to check, and if you have to, add more pigment to extend that processing time. You still have plenty of oxidation going on. You'll be able to develop those dyes and get better coverage over your gray. So those are the steps I would recommend. Also, when you post-oxidize or when your post-color treatment, here's what I recommend. Number 1, rinse the hair until the color runs clear. Once the color runs clear, shampoo once with an acidifying shampoo, something in a low pH of around 4. Remember, you're working with a head of hair where the pH is already setting at about 9.3. Anytime you take a low pH of 4 and apply it to a chemical that is setting at 9.3, you're not going to bring it down to neutral. You're only going to bring it partial way. So you're going to shampoo once, then you're going to rinse. Then you're going to shampoo with acidifying shampoo again, twice. Keep bringing it down little by little by little. Then you're going to use an acidifying conditioner or a mask or whatever type of product that you want to use there. And then I would recommend an additional acidifying spray. You want to keep those cuticle layers as compact as possible. That way you get the color to make sure that it stays well and it doesn't bleed out on you. And even those residual dyes that may have not binded together successfully in those cuticle layers, they'll have a little bit more life and they'll hold on. So those are the steps I would recommend when you're dealing with gray hair. Now, there are two things you can do, two ways of manipulating your product that can be very, very helpful. First of all, you can pre-soften the hair. If you know the hair is resistant, you can pre-soften. And pre-softening is done with an alkaline source. It is not done with an acid source. I know, Milady's textbook teaches you to put peroxide on the hair and put them under a dryer. I don't know why they do that. Here's what we do know. Peroxide will punch holes in the hair. Maybe that's their way of pre-softening. But we recommend that you use straight color from the tube. The alkalinity in the color will cause the cuticle layers to swell slightly and prepare the hair so it's more receptive when you put the color over the top of it. Now, here's the rule of thumb. 2 levels lighter and warm. Keep that as a guide. Whatever your target is, 2 levels lighter if you're going to pre-soften and something warm. Why? Because gray is 1 part blue, 1 part red, 1 part yellow. If I add warmth, such as gold, which is 2 parts yellow and 1 part red, guess what? I make brown. I make the balanced base that we all strive to create in our industry, which is brown. So 2 levels lighter and warmer. The second way that you can manipulate your product is you can do what we call shift your color formula. Shifting your color formula means increasing the amount of dye and decreasing the amount of developer. So for example, my perfect combination for me is 3 parts of color to 2 parts of developer. 3 parts of color to 2 parts of developer. You've done 2 things here. Number 1, you've increased the alkalinity of your solution because the alkaline source, of course, is color. So your solution is already more alkaline, which will cause additional swelling in the hair. And secondly, you've added more pigment because you've increased the amount of pigment in your formulation. So this allows you to create a more opaque result, something with more opacity. And you can do that, you can manipulate that in normal color processes as well. But this will allow you to achieve more success when you're trying to get maximum coverage over your gray hair. So understanding how to work with gray is so very important. The thing that really makes my brain smoke is when somebody says, I used that color and it didn't cover the gray. I used that color, what's wrong with it? Why won't it give me great gray coverage? Let me tell you something. Okay, if you can manipulate your product properly and you understand the nature of gray hair, you can cover gray hair. People say, well, 10 volume gives you better coverage than 20 volume. Not true, not true. The only reason that people think 10 volume gives you better coverage than 20 volume is because 10 volume disturbs less melanin, less pigment in the hair. So therefore, the pigmented portion of the hair is already deeper to begin with because I use 10 volume. That's why we think that we get better coverage or a deeper result or more deposit. Not true at all. I don't mind if you use 10 volume. That's up to you. Most success will come with you, though, with 20 volume. Understand all professional colors are tested with 20 volume in the laboratory. Most of them are not tested with 10 volume. Hopefully this has helped you with great coverage. If you find this helpful, please share it with your friends because our goal at Guru Village is to help empower you and help you discover your genius. So until I see you again next time, from my heart to yours, I'm Captain Color, and I'm out.